Hello.
Hello, this is Paul. Is this Paul Walker?
Yes, sir. This must be Sparky.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the Stunt Hangar Live program, and we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Well, we didn't get much insight what we're going to be talking about. You want to give us a little rundown on your stunt career?
My stunt career in an hour?
Well,
oh my goodness! I thought about it briefly, and I thought, well, I'll just talk about the some of the world champs trips, and there's interesting things that always seem to happen on a world champs trip. So it for me, all that started with the first team trials that I went to, which was in '85 in Detroit, and well, Pete Bergstrom and I drove out to Detroit from Seattle and flew there, and that was my very first experience at a team trials, and it was a little bit overwhelming at first. And after the first day of flying, I was in fifth place. Back in the day, they added things up a little different, so they took I think it was the two best rounds on Saturday and the two best rounds on Sunday, and added those all together. So I was in fifth place, and going into Saturday, or so I should say a Sunday, and I just buckled down and flew. I flew pretty well, and I ended up second. And it was quite the surprise to me because Jimmy won. It was not a surprise to me. I was second, and Billy was third. I had finally beaten Billy for the first time in my career, so that was pretty cool. And so that was the start. And so the world champs for the next year in '86, I had built a new airplane for it, a new Bad News with a Super Tiger 60 in it, and I was all prepared and ready to go to the world champs. And geez, about a week before the competition started, I ended up pancaking this thing into the ground on the pavement and busted the landing gear out of it. And so I went into a furious repair of that just before I left, and it was I thought a good fix, but you always have second doubts that gee, I'm going to land, and it's going to break, and I'm going to be halfway around the world, and it's going to be tough to fix. But everything held. So went on my way, and this was my very first trip to a place like this. So I was going to fly from Seattle to JFK. So I flew into their domestic terminal. Then we had to walk over with my stuff to the international terminal, meet with the rest of the team, and from there we flew to Vienna, and then we were to get in rental cars and drive all the way into Hungary. And this was back in '86. This was still, Iron Curtain country days. So, but before I get going here, I had everything packaged. This was in the day of the big boxes, one-piece airplane, big box. But they took it, and I flew into JFK, and all my baggage and everything came out except my model.
oh no.
And oh no is right, because then I've got like a 2-hour window to run over there and meet with the rest of the team and go, and there was no airplane. And I checked with them, and I said, "Are you sure you didn't forward this on?" "Oh no, we didn't know. This was right here on the ticket. It says right here. See, hand it to you here, and then you're going to take it over there." That was the plan, and so there was no airplane. And time clicked on. Back in the day, there were no cell phones, and so I asked the person at the ticket counter there at the domestic terminal, "Can you call over to the international terminal and tell them I'm here waiting to go, but I'm missing something?" They wouldn't do it. And it was so frustrating. I had all the stuff with me, and I couldn't just pick it all up and walk over there. And as soon as I pick it up and walk over there, then my airplane shows up, and who knows what happens with it then. So I felt between a rock and a hard place, so I sat there and waited for it. Well, of course, it never showed up, and I missed my flight to Vienna. And so I'd gone into the lost baggage thing, and they said, "Wow, gee, it got on the airplane. They knew that it got on the airplane, but where it was, they didn't know." So I hung around for hours, and finally, I didn't know this, but at the time, they closed down the terminal at nighttime, and so basically I got kicked out of the place at closing at dark, and so I had to hop in a taxi and go find a hotel near the airport, come back the next day, and work with them. So I went back there, and they finally said, come into the back room, and we'll show you what's going on, and they traced it down, and they said the airplane went from here to there to there to there, and she looks up on her thing and says, wow, it should be landing right now. And we look out the window, and there it was. It was landing right in the runway in front of us, and so she says, hang on, as soon as that thing lands and they empty it, we'll go inside and look. And so they went inside. They said, no, there's no model box here. And anyway, I ended up staying another night there. I come back the next morning, and they said, well, I wonder if they thought it was cargo because it was in a wooden box, you know. I wonder if they sent it over to the air cargo building. So they sent me over there and had me, a guy meet me over there. He let me wander through the whole air cargo building. I looked for every wooden box in there. There was nothing. So at that point, I was pretty dejected, and I decided, well, you know, I can't go without an airplane. There's no point in it. So I'm just going to turn around and arrange for a ticket home and be done with things. You know, and I was walking back through the parking lot, and some guy in a little golf cart came running up to me and said, hey, are you Paul Walker? I said, well, yeah. There's a phone call over here for you. I said, what? Anyway, we ran back to the terminal. There's a phone call. It was my wife on the phone. And she said, the team manager called from Hungary and wanted to know how come I wasn't there. And I said, what do you mean, how come I wasn't there? She says, well, your model's there, but you're not. And so the bottom line is they had forwarded this thing on and never knew it, and they didn't tell me. And so now here I am. My airplane's over there, and I'm over here. But back in the day, AMA had a good travel agent for doing all this. They actually had a travel agent that took care of this. And so he arranged to me get on the next flight over there. And so that was pretty cool. So that means I had to go to Vienna. I was figuring, geez, I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to rent a car and drive all the way on my own. I never planned on that. I didn't have the maps. I didn't have all of the stuff. You know, I said, well, we'll do what we can, you know. So I get ready to get on the airplane, and lo and behold, there's old Doc Rudner there, Chuck Rudner. He was on the combat team that year, but his wife had a medical emergency on their flight from L.A. to JFK, and they had to land in Chicago to take care of her medical emergency. And he being a doctor, he knew all the details. Anyway, she finally says, look, I'm fine. It's going to be all right. You go. So he ended up going over to JFK, and we met there, and we took the same flight over. And in the process, turns out a bunch of other combat guys were going over there on the same flight. So we had a van full of people and stuff, and I didn't have an airplane to put in the van, so I fit in relatively easily. And so we all met at the airport, and the bizarre thing was is when we were picking up our luggage, this was in '86, and you remember there was a little shooting at Vienna Airport in '86 where, and I don't even remember the details anymore, so long ago, but there was a shooting at the airport, and the security people there shot and killed a number of, I'll call them terrorists, if you will, at the airport, and their bloodstains were still on the floor. Right when we were picking up our luggage, standing across, there's bloodstains on the floor, and there's guards with machine guns standing here, and I said, wow, things are different over here in Europe.
Yeah, pretty spooky.
So, yeah, it was a little spooky at the time. And anyway, so we got our van, and we all got our maps out and looked at it, and okay, we know where we're going. We got in, took off, went down the road, and we drove for like an hour. And all of a sudden kept saying, you know, it's odd. Should have thought we'd have been going a little more south than we were going, but gee, that's the road. Anyway, then the road makes a slight left turn and heads kind of north as opposed to heading south. And we thought, well, that's really odd. And then we come to a border crossing. We said, well, it shouldn't have been that soon. So this is back in the Cold War days, and so it was just like these pictures you see. There's 3 sets of fences there. You get to the first one, they open it up. Well, you can drive through. Get to the second one, open it up, drive through. Get to the third one, a young kid with his biggest machine gun I ever saw start pointing it at us and signaling us to get out of the car. So we all got out of the car, and they took us into this little hut. I'll call it a little hut where the guards were staying. And they asked for our passports and our visas and whatnot, and they were looking at it, and they started yelling at us. And it turns out they were yelling at us in Czech, and we didn't understand a word of it. We had no idea what was wrong, and finally, Ledner says, "Well, you know what?" He says, "I studied Hungarian a little bit before I went on this trip." He says, "I think they're trying to tell us that Hungary," they kept pointing, "is that way." And we all looked at each other. We got the map out, and we looked at it. We'd gotten on the wrong road. There's two roads that paralleled each other with a set of railroad tracks in between the two. And one went into Hungary, and one went into Czechoslovakia. Now, why they didn't go as one road and then split, but there was two separate roads. And we got on the road that went to Czechoslovakia. And then we realized, oh, my gosh, we'd made a mistake. And so it was now their turn to have some fun with us. So they said, "Okay, go ahead, go." So we turned around and got in the car, and we went through the first gate, and we got back to the first gate we came in, and they left it, had it shut. They wouldn't let us through for 5 minutes. We were all there sweating. And what's going on? Anyway, they finally opened the door, opened the gate, let us through, and then we turned around and retraced our steps and got back on the right road. And at that time, we went into Hungary. It was almost no different than, say, going into Canada at the time. We just kind of almost slowed down, showed them our passports. They waved, and on we went, And so then we got to the World Champ site. So I got there 3 days later than the rest of the team, and it typical of a lot of these World Champs places in Europe, it wasn't made for a stunt circle. I mean, they had one, but it was surrounded by trees on one side and buildings on another, and it was kind of down into the ground a little bit. It was very strange. I think Billy had a name for it. I can't remember what he called it. Not the tar pit, but the pit at the stair or something. He always had a name to be said. So I got there, and Jimmy had already crashed an airplane. Part of these trees, they hadn't cleared them, and he was flying, and Jimmy would always take a step out, and when he was doing like an hourglass or a vertical 8, he'd take a step towards the airplane. Anyway, he'd done that, and as he came down, he hit one of the limbs and took the wing off his airplane, and so he had gone to his backup already, and anyway, there was effectively one circle there, and they gave us a practice circle there, which was the courtyard of the multi-story apartment kind of complex. Cobblestone, kids running around. That was where we were to go practice, and obviously nobody did. So there was no place to practice. But our team manager scoured around, and he found a soccer field, and it was all under lock and key, but he found the person there that they had someone there who lived on the site that took care of the grounds, and he worked a deal with him. I don't know what it was, but he worked a deal with him to let us use that. So, but nobody else was to know about it, So we'd go up there and we practice on this nice grass field. We had to hand launch the airplanes. The grass was pretty thick. And we did that day after day after day. And interesting thing was we come to the last day that we thought we were going to use this thing. When we left, we decided we're going to give this guy a little tip for letting us use it. So we gave him like $20 a piece. So we gave him like $60. And he always said, thank you. He even used English, thank you, So back in 86, even in this, quote, luxury hotel we were in, there was no air conditioning or no ice, nothing like that, nothing cold. Anyway, so we had given him this money, and lo and behold, we had to come out the next day and use that practice circle again. And so we showed up at the gate, and the gate was closed, and he saw us there. And he went and opened the gate. He says, signaled us to come in. There was a soccer game going. He went out in the middle of it, stopped the soccer game, kicked everybody off the field, told them to get out. We went around. We moved around on the track there, parked, got our stuff out. Everybody's looking around, what is going on? And he said, go, get out, you know. And so we were there, flying, we flew there, I don't know, a dozen flights or so. And in the middle of that, he came out with a silver platter with glasses of ice and Cokes for us, you know. And he served us with this. Thank you, he said. You know? So he kicked them off the field and served us a cold ice drink. I mean, it was very interesting. It was, we appreciated it. After I got home, I did some studying and realized that we probably gave him about half a year's salary, what he made by way of exchange rate and all that. So,
right.
Because we were eating out there, and we go out and have the best dinner you could have, in wine and beer and dessert. Total was like $2, you know. So we were living high on the hog at the time there, and the food was really good. So we flew there. The competition was a tough battle. It was my introduction to politics and this. They got there, and of course, one of the judges couldn't judge for whatever reason. I don't remember the details. And they were trying to find another judge, and there was a Russian guy there, and they were trying to get him to do it. And he says, no. He says, okay, he says, if I judge, but a Russian guy, I'll win if I judge. And sure enough, the Russian guy won. However, the Russian guy flew fairly well. There was no question of it that he flew well. But it was just one of those, I'll judge, but I'm going to guarantee that the Russian guy wins. So the Russian guy came in second, and Zhang Zhangdong came in. Kalishnikov was first, Zhang Dong was second, and I ended up third. I beat both Billy and Jimmy there. So I was pretty stoked. That was a pretty good competition, considering I had a delay in getting there, and the field was as tough as it was. So
how many world championships have you won?
Oh, I've just won one time. I've tried many times. I've had seconds, and I've got enough seconds and thirds, but I've just, you know, I'm slowly we'll get to some of that. So that was in '86, and the next time, my next trip there was in '88, and I ended up using the same airplane. I had built another one that met its demise with a broken line cable in my handle, and so I ended up having to use the same airplane again, which really wasn't my first choice, but that's what it was. And so that was in '88, and so the Nats were at a convenient time that year. They were just before the World Champs, so I ended up taking a 6-week vacation from work at the time, and I went to the Nats and flew there, and Jimmy was first, I was second. And then we drove from there in Jimmy's car up to Jimmy's house in Jersey, and we stayed the night there because the next morning we went over to the airport to leave for, this time it was in Kiev. So we flew from JFK to Moscow, and then Moscow down to Kiev. And so it was an experience staying in Jimmy's house, because we got put up upstairs in the area with no air conditioning and basically no windows. It was a swelter house. Oh, it was hot and humid in there. And Don was with me, so we got to share a double bed. I mean, it was horrible. It was just nasty, but we got through it. And Jimmy had airplanes in the house everywhere. I mean, he had the basement that he was working on. He had 5 or 6 that were under construction. He had his living room full of stuff. Of course, he's living at home with Mom. But airplanes were everywhere. It was just an interesting experience. So, and then we flew over to Moscow on a Aeroflot plane, and it looked like an old converted bomber. It had like a glass nose. It had the 4 engines in the back. You know, it's kind of like a 727, but there was 4 on the side instead of 2. But this thing didn't have the range to make it all the way from New York to Moscow, so we had to stop in Gander, Newfoundland, and refuel. They took everybody off the airplane and refueled it, and got back on, and got into Moscow. And of course, they didn't just fly straight into the airport before they got to the city. You had to go down to like 1,000 feet and fly into the city so that you couldn't see anything. It was still, again, before it was still Iron Curtain days. So we got in there, then we switched planes, flew into Kiev, and we flew, again, another kind of converted bomber airplane. It was very strange. And in Kiev, we got put up in a kind of sort of what they used as a campground. Our team got put into, there's a whole bunch of teams. Canadians were there too. We got put into huts. I don't know, basic word is a hut. Because they basically didn't have doors or windows in it. It had an opening for a window. Didn't even have a screen. It had kind of a curtain that went over it. So you were at the mercy of the elements. And it was cool and damp there the whole time. There was nothing, it was like never dry, anything. And you had to go to the restroom that was, eighth of a mile down the trail, and here's a little room that was just nasty. So we got to stay in those places. And
what year was that?
Fortunately, that was in '88. But the facility they had for flying out there was relatively nice. We had a stunt circle was there. It was caged, but again, there was trees around it, buildings and stuff. So whatever air came through there was never really smooth air. It was always bumpy. They had an area out. They actually had a practice circle for stunt, and so that got used a lot. And and they served us breakfast every morning. And one morning we went to breakfast, and we had liver and onions for breakfast.
Yeah.
And I'm not into liver and onions for breakfast.
Me
so
neither.
Don was with me, and he just loves liver and onions. So he had my share, and he had somebody else's share for breakfast. I was a hungry puppy that day. So we go out to the field, and we didn't come back until dinner time. And because it was a ways down the road, they transported us by a bus to get out there. So we hop into this big bus, and we fish our stunt planes in there with everybody else getting in there. It was always an experience. These things. So that was Zangdon won that year. Klishnikov was second, and honestly, I don't remember who was third, but Jimmy was fourth, and I was fifth. And that was the year we got there, and we were given the components for our fuel, and we had to mix it all up. And apparently, the jug of nitro that I got had water in it. And when I mixed it up, my motor would hardly stay lit. It was just terrible. You do whatever, and you do an inside turn, and it just it would just almost stop, but it would keep running. And it was just terrible. My first official flight was like that. I couldn't, solve the problem. And the first flight was just stumbling through, and that set the stage for everything, And then after that, we figured out what was wrong. And do you think my teammates would loan me any of their fuel? There was no chance in the world. Jimmy or Bob Barron were going to give me any of their fuel. So I ended up, the combat guys heard about it, and so they said, oh, here, we've got some extra here. And so I was using their combat fuel, and it worked fine. It was 10% and 20% caster. It worked fine.
Right.
And from there on, the engine ran dandy. But so that was another interesting experience. 88, so I was fifth. And then, the next time it was 1990 I went. Again, they held every other year. 90 was in France. And I also did another 6-week kind of vacation. The wife and I took a tour of New England when we were done after that. And so we went to France, and this was the first time with a tune pipe now. Switched to the tune pipe. First impact made it there. And again, the politics of all of this stuff just if you think it's bad here in this country, you guys just don't have a clue. In France, well, we were given a practice area, which was a parking lot, almost a gravel parking lot on a slope by the river with trees and buildings all around it. But that's all there was. And so we used that a couple of times, but it was pretty nasty. So other than the rain that was there, that we were there for almost a week, and it was raining most all the time. We had scout fly. We found like a college somewhere that had acres of soccer fields and whatnot, and we went way out at the corner of one, and we're flying out there, and somebody came all the way out there to tell us, no, we can't do that. You have to leave, no insurance, So we got thrown off that. Then we found another place that was kind of hidden, and nobody knew we were there. So we used that for a little while, and we got so tired of not being able to fly because of the rain that it was only raining lightly, and we went out and flew in that grass field, and we just flew and trying to get our fill of flying, and it was raining, and finally all three of us were standing there, and we just stopped and looked at each other, and I said to them, I says, is your plane flying as bad as mine? And they all looked and said, yeah, mine's flying pretty bad too. What's going on? And anyway, everything was soaking wet, and my airplane had soaked up. Mine was a foam wing, and it was a take apart, so there was a path for water to get in, and water got in the outboard section of the wing into the foam. And so I had about, an extra 10 ounces of tip weight. It was a horrible flying plane. And those guys had water in their wings too. And so we went back to we just looked at each other, and it was pouring rain on us when we were doing this now. And we just laughed because we were so intent on flying that we didn't even realize it was raining as hard as it was. We went back to the room. I ended up having to cut a hole in my wingtip, and I duct taped a hairdryer to it to run the hairdryer, warm air into it to dry it out. And they just let theirs sit inside for a day, and it was fine. So yeah, we had to go through that. And then the interesting thing was there was this beautiful grass field just near our official practice area. And they said, no, don't ever use that. We have no insurance coverage to go use that. So after so many days of really not flying, Jimmy and Billy just had to go over there and fly. And so I said, okay, fine, go over there. So we went over there, and everybody gets their airplanes out. And as soon as they get theirs out of the way, I put mine back in. They said, what, you're not going to fly? I said, no, I'm not going to fly here. Oh, okay. So Jimmy first gets up and goes, and he flies. And, okay, hey, this works, and he lands. It's a little rough, no big deal. Billy says, well, yeah, Jimmy talked him into flying. So Billy goes and flies. And this was his yellow Junar, I think it was called. And everything was fine. He goes to land, and as he's rolling out, he hits a gopher hole or something. Catches the gear, bends the landing gear back 45 degrees. So he was not happy, how Billy gets. And so we went back to the room, and this was not a take apart anything. So this was a bolt, lashed right into the wing, with wire and stuff. So he just bent it back while he's straining the wing, doing all this, and he got it back so that it was in the right place. So it was okay. So that's part of that story. We'll come back to in the next championship. But so we go through this thing. We're flying. The wind was. The conditions were okay, and we had flown 2 of the 3 final rounds. And after 2 of the 3 final rounds, there was 3 of us. Kalishnikov, Zhangdong, and myself were virtually tied. And I was thinking, wow, this is good. I'm close. I'm getting there, And then I looked up, and I saw the judges go over there and study the scoreboard. Oh, that ticked me off. But they went over and studied the scoreboard. And so be it. We just have to go back, and we've got to go fly the best we can, you know. And this is back in the day where those judges didn't care about sizes or corners and all that. So here I am trying to fly at 45 degrees, and both the other two guys are flying at 60, 70-degree loops and whatnot. It was just so unbelievably different, the two styles. So we flew the third round. I lost by 100 points. I was in third. I finished third, but I was 100 points out after that, and we were tied after 2 rounds. And, you know, I still think it has everything to do with those judges looking at the scores and saying, hey, that guy got too close. We'll take care of him. Because I changed nothing. I don't think, you know, I watched them fly. They changed nothing. And all of a sudden, they're 100 points ahead. So that was kind of disheartening. That really, I didn't, it bothered me.
Yeah, it would bother me.
That was the end of that competition. And so I finished third, and then Jimmy and Billy were down the way something. I can't remember, you know. Billy is an interesting character because he would really let his emotions get the best of him. And he'd get to a point where he'd say, well, Jesus, I'm not going to win. And then, you know, he would just fly himself out of it. It was interesting. And I thought, wow, how can you let yourself do that? But it happened. It happened more than once. This is not just one occurrence of this. And so as long as he's winning, everything's fine. But if he's not, it goes to hell in a handbasket pretty quick. And you know, Jimmy is Jimmy. He just keep plugging. Jimmy always had to go fly. And our modern day version of Jimmy in terms of that is like Orestes. Orestes goes to the world champs, and he's always got to fly. You know, but he's a little different than Jimmy in that respect. But in the fact that Orestes is a lot more courteous about letting people know he wants to go fly. Jimmy would just walk up into your face and say, we're going flying right now, you come help me, you know. So it was a fun experience nonetheless. And so that was in 1990. 2 years later, the world champs were in 92. They were in, at the time, Czechoslovakia. They were right in the middle of the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic splitting. But it was an amicable split. Everything was going fine. So our world championships were held at the same place Bob Gieske won his world championships in Czechoslovakia. It was a little east of Prague. Everything went swimmingly. We flew into Munich. We drove over from Munich through Germany into Czechoslovakia. We actually stopped at the border. At that time, there was no more gates, no more fences. You could see the lines in the ground where the fences used to be. The fences were all down, and the border, you know, you stopped basically because there was a store there now. You know, you can buy, you know, your Quickie Mart or whatever it was, you know. And you didn't show passports to anybody anymore. You just kind of, if you wanted to just drive through, you just drove through, you know. So it was interesting. And we drove in, had a good time. And we had the official circle, which was, again, surrounded totally by trees. And we had a practice area that they used for RC field, RC takeoff area, but it wasn't as wide as it needed to be for a stunt plane. But that's okay. You could make do. And so I would say everything went swimmingly. See, the team was myself, Billy, and Bobby this time. And we were doing practice. You know, for me, everything was fine. It just turned it on and it went. It was fine. The airplane was happy. I got to the point very quickly of just killing time because everything was working and I knew it. And so then it was Billy and Bobby fiddling with their stuff. Billy's stuff, of course, ran. That worked no problem. It was just a matter of Billy adjusting and getting things right. Bobby, on the other hand, his airplane had trouble running, and it would stop. It would go off and go over a wing over and stop, and you know what was going on anyway. So he headed over into the pits and upside down, and he was working on a tune pipes thing. I said, well, he's the inventor of tune pipe stuff. You know, he knows about this. and he had it upside down, and I'm looking at it, and he had stuff in there that you just didn't do. He had the pipes sitting right on some sheeting, so there was no airflow. He had lots of things wrong. And I turned to him and I said, wow, this is really strange that it doesn't run here, Bob. It runs at home, but it doesn't run here. Then he got this sheepish look on his face and goes, well, I never flew it at home. The first time I ever flew it was here. I said, you brought an airplane to a world championships, and we're trying to win the team championship, and you brought a plane you've never flown before? Well, yeah. I was just floored. I couldn't... It was beyond my comprehension how somebody could do that. But he did. He got it worked out. We did some working on it to clear the way, let some airflow by. He was overheating is what he was doing. So we got that fixed, and it flew. And in the end, he did well enough that we won the team championships. And now, in practice, again, I was just killing time. One day, the wind was blowing pretty hard, and nobody wanted to fly. I said, well, shoot, I can fly in the wind. What's the big deal? Well, I went out and flew. And everything was going swimmingly until the hourglass. The first corner turned up, but the second corner coming across, and I turned the third corner to come down. It turned and then rolled in at me. And that's a pretty scary feeling. And where do I go? It's coming towards me. What are you doing? So I backed up. And over there, it's not a full paved circle. We were on a donut, and then there's a little circle in the middle for you to stand on. Well, I hit the edge of that, and I fell on my back. And as my airplane's coming across near a tree over here, I just stuck my hand up from way on the ground, and I said, oh, I think it needs to be held down. And I whipped down into it. It cut the end of the lines. It turned up and just missed the tree standing there. There was a fence around the flying field. It missed that. Came back over the top. I managed to get up and stand up and did it. In the meantime, Billy was in the pits. He saw this. He was running out to catch it while it was under full power. Oh. He was going to run out and catch it. And we all had a good laugh over that. It's how your instincts take over sometimes. So I got done, and you get done, and then you say, wow, the wind's so bad. How am I going to land this thing? It was so bad. But I got down, and then Bob says at that time, he says, you're going to win. I can just tell you right now, you're going to win this thing. Every time it takes luck to win these things, whether you think so or not. Sometimes you got to have luck on your side. He says, you are a lucky dog right now, because normally you would not have had an airplane. But saying all that, I always used to take 2 airplanes with me to these. This was the first time I took 1 airplane.
Did he hand you a roll of toilet paper?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Did he hand you a roll of toilet paper?
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, yeah, it was, I got a video of it. It's just the strangest thing. And of course, then the airplane handled perfectly after that. So I must have hit some funny in the air right there when that happened. And so that was still in practice. And then we did our official practice on the circle and all that. Comes time for our first official flights. I can't remember who went first or did what, but I remember Billy's turn. I think Billy was like the last of us to go for the first round flight. And he says, well, I'd like to get one more practice flight before I go. And we said, fine. Hopped into the van, went out to the practice site. Of course, no one was there because it was only so good. And he took off, did everything. He landed. His airplane was rolling out. And then all of a sudden, the outboard gear just breaks off. And the wing flops on the ground. And we looked at it and said, that was so, because it touched down and rolled, and it was almost to a dead stop, and that landing gear broke off. Well, that was the same airplane from 2 years ago when he hit that gopher hole and bent the landing gear back, and then he bent it forward. So we've been flying it for 2 more years, and, little wiggles here and there on it. It fatigued that joint out, and when it was rolling out on that rough asphalt, that was enough. It broke the gear off. And again, that was not a take-apart airplane of anything on it. I mean, the cowl would come off. That's it, So he had to run back quickly to the hotel room, and he got some copper wire out and tried to lash it together and solder that really quick and get that back on. I think he ended up making a new outboard gear leg, and so when he flew his official flight, he had a wheel pan on one side but not one on the other. And but he got it done. He got there just in time to hook it up, get it pull tested, and get out on the circle. And so, yeah, funny how those things go. 2 years ago, when he hit that gopher hole, he bent it, and that was the start of the fatiguing on that wire, and it lets go right at the next World Champs, right when he needed to have it intact. So that was practice. We went through qualifying. Everything went swimmingly for me. It was one of those times where just you could do no wrong. It's like I knew going in that I had this. I had it in the bag. There was no way these guys were going to beat me. And this airplane I had flew real well in very light to still air, and turns out that's what we got. Instead of all that wind that we had in practice, when the competition started, the air went away. And it was pretty still air, and that thing just worked wonderful in that air.
Was that the pink impact?
Else. I'm sorry, was that what?
The pink impact?
Yes, that was the first one with the checkerboard and all that. It was not the first pink one, it was the World Champs pink one. But, yes, and that flew so well, and a strange thing happened. I was flying in the finals, and I can't remember if it's the second or the third flight in the finals. And at the World Champs, you're right next to all these other circles, speed circle, team race circle, and combat was a little ways away. But in the team race circles, they've got a PA system, and the guy telling them, you fouled this, you did this, and you're disqualified. It goes on and on. I'm over here doing an official finals round flight. I'm in the middle of a square 8. And I find myself listening to that guy said, yellow team, whipping, this team doing, and I'm in the square 8, and I'm listening, focusing on what that guy's saying instead of my flying. I was so on automatic pilot, it just boom, 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 the square 8 just kept coming, and I'm listening to this other stuff. I had to slap myself. Wait a minute, let's stop doing that, pay attention to what you're doing. But it was so automatic, and it was fun. You do these little sight jobs on guys, and I did mine on Bob Hunt. We go out every morning, and these guys all wanted a practice flight before their official flight. And come time for I said, no, I don't need one. Bob said, what do you mean you don't need one? I said, Bob, I don't need one. And I go out. Anyway, I won all 3 qualifying rounds and all 3 rounds of the finals, and the one from the very beginning to the very end, and it was a pretty cool deal. That was great. So that was in '92, and '94 we went to China. Oh my goodness, yes, China. And again, the Europeans would have been proud of this kind of field. It was in the middle of the city. I mean, there were apartment buildings around one side of it. Oh, there was a grass field on one side, but then there's high-rise building around it. There's a big factory building on another side of it. There was no chance for any kind of clean air whatsoever there. And the story was this is where the Chinese team, that's their home field. That's where they practice all the time. And so we had official practice hours from, I can't remember what the numbers were, from 9 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. Well, it was light out much earlier and later than that, but that's all. Turns out that the Chinese would go out from 7 till 9 and fly, or then they go out in the evening, after, from whatever it was, 6 to 7 or 8, and fly after that. And so they got as much time as they wanted on their own field, and everybody else was kicked off. So just dandy. So yeah, it was I kind of figured going in that there was little chance that any of us were going to do anything there, and that turned out to be the case. I was the highest placing non-Chinese. Chinese were 1, 2, 3, and I was 4th, and trying to remember where the rest of the guys finished, 4th and 5th and 7th, and we had four people there. I went as defending champion, so the team finished from fifth on down, and so we all got a taste for those. And
are you going to be able to send me some pictures of all this stuff?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Are you going to be able to send me some pictures of all this stuff?
Oh my goodness. Possibly. I can see what I can do. I don't have them on digital format right now. They're all pictures, and I may have to take a picture of it and send that to you the best I can.
All right, because I got to
see what I can do.
Got to have something to go with the story. They certainly don't want to look at my face for an hour.
Yeah, I understand.
Right.
Yeah. So, let's see, how did that go? We were Ted was there as he was the team, and so he heard me grouse about the Chinese and how they flew and how they had no corners and how their rounds weren't round and all that. And he gets me off to the side once and says, "Hey, you got to stop this. Don't be talking like this. Don't bring this stuff home." And I said, "Ted, there's one flying here right now. I want you to stand here and look at it." And so he watched it, and he goes, "Oh, well, that wasn't a very bad square 8." And I said, "Bob, that was a round 8." And he said, "No, that was a square 8." And the guy proceeded to do a square 8. And he goes, "Wow, there was no difference between those two." The round 8 and square 8s were hardly any different. And yet these guys slaughtered us, And he goes, "Wow, well, the one thing they could do is they did intersections and they did bottoms." And so I tell anybody can see that. Your grandmother can see intersections and bottoms, but they can't. They weren't focusing on sizes. They didn't care about the shapes. Apparently, just became who could do the best intersections and bottoms, and so it was a tough deal. We all left with kind of a sour taste in our mouth for some of that. And so the next world champs were in Sweden in '96. The next one that I went to was in '96, and I was anxious to get back to something a little more even-handed, if you will, and fly there. And finally, we had a facility that was not too horrible. We had an old Air Force base that was not being used anymore that they held the world champs on. So we had quite the length of runway that we could use for practice. Of course, our practice circles that they gave us were on part of the runway that was sloped uphill. There was lots of it that was flat. But no, couldn't use that part. We had to use the part that was sloped. But for practice, so be it. Our official circle was the intersection of a couple of runways, and it was fairly flat there. And everything was going dandy, and all our team qualified for the finals, and in the finals were held in a quite strong wind. Oh, that's too bad, isn't it? I always could do pretty well in the wind. Anyway, so we flew in the wind. And the first round I was basically tied with Han Ping for first, and David and Billy were down a little bit. I was getting ready for my second round flight in the wind again. It was just blowing up a storm, and I had just been pull tested, and I was minutes away from going out there. Actually, it was more like about 7 minutes from going out there, and all of a sudden the wind drops. Oh, I got this big smile on my face. Oh, I thought, this timing is just incredible. This is great. And then it hit me. I said, oh, I wonder who's flying right at this moment. And I looked up, and Han Ping was flying, and he got his flight in the calm air. And I swear, as soon as he landed, boom, the wind popped right back up. And that was the contest, and I couldn't match his score in that round. And in the third round, the wind blew again, and we were close. So he won. He was first. I was second. David was third. He won by that bit of luck where he got up that flight where the wind backed off, and he was flying. It could have been anybody else almost, and it wouldn't have mattered. but he had to be there at that time to catch that little break. So he was first, I was second, David was third, and I believe we took the team trophy home that year again, because Billy was, I think, seventh or so, so second, third, and seventh was good. And, oh, you know what? No, I didn't. I think we came in second. They changed the format, the way they used to calculate the team thing used to be very bizarre. It included qualification rounds and all of this other stuff, and I think Billy must have had one bad qualification round. I think that cost us the team trophy that year. I think we were second in that, and the Chinese had the team trophy as well. Soon after that, they changed it to only use the final placings. So generally, that means the top 15. They're basically just using your final round scores, and so that was a pretty good trip. It was an interesting experience. We learned about how much English is used everywhere. This is in '96. I didn't think that was the case. We were looking for some acetone. We had to clean Mr. Berry's lines. He had some lines that were not very clean. He was using solid lines, I believe. We had to clean them. We were looking for some acetone. So we're in a grocery, some kind of store in Sweden, looking for acetone. We're talking to each other. Says, where would you find acetone in a store like this? And from over the wall, we heard aisle 7. We were kind of surprised. And I, on my flight home, I was sitting next to an exchange student from Sweden, and we got to talking, and she says, yeah, everybody there is taught English now. She says, like, we're in a global economy, and we all have to, we're trying to do well. We need to learn English. So everybody there is taught English. Plus, we have, we learn Swedish, obviously. But she said, there's only 3 million of us, and there's billions of people in the world that speak English. And it's stupid to think that everybody's going to speak Swedish. That's not the case. So that was really the start of going to these competitions and finding so many more and more people who speak English now, and the communication was much easier. And then, okay, so that was 96. 98 was back in Kiev again, and this was the one of the worst trips I've ever been on. It was just terrible. This was now after Cold War days, and now corruption was the keynote for any government official. And when we got to Kiev airport, you got to go through your customs and all that. And so they're checking, do you have medical insurance? And unfortunately, I did. I had good stuff. And but anyway, I was standing in line waiting, and I think 2 people ahead of me was all part of our team. They said, well, no, I've got this. And they said, oh, no, well, you're going to have to buy some. And so they said, okay, well, it was $10 or something. The guy said, well, for $10, yeah, I'll just make him happy and go. And, okay, the next guy in line comes up and says, no, I don't. They said, okay, $100. I mean, it was insane. They got to me, and I said, no, I've got this insurance. They said, oh, no, $100. I said, no, I have this insurance. And I made our team manager come over there, and they said, oh, yeah, okay, no charge. Yeah, all right. So only because I resisted. They said, okay, everything's fine, So we finally got to the hotel there, and we didn't stay in the campground anymore because it was old and decommissioned and a mess. So we actually stayed in the hotel there. But we had shipped over our fuel, and that got held up in their customs, and they wanted, I think it was like $1,500 to give us our fuel. And we said, well, that's kind of steep. So once again, we were without fuel in Russia. And
how many gallons of fuel was $1,500?
Let's see, what did we ship? We shipped like 12 gallons of fuel.
That's it?
3, 4. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It wasn't much. Yeah. So they just saw an opportunity. Somehow they figured they knew we needed that, so they were going to hang us out to buy as much as they could. So we said, no, it's all yours. We don't want it. And so we got fuel there in some fashion, and it worked okay. We didn't have any problem with it, but we had to come up with it somewhere else. And it just went on and on. Oh, the Big Art was judging there, and turns out that they would pay for him to go there, but then he had to fly on their choice of airlines and times and all that, and it didn't work out for him. So he got a ticket from whatever, and flew over there. Well, they said, no, you didn't come with the way we said, so we're not paying for that. Well, this all happened just before the start of the finals. Well, okay, this goes. I'm sorry, I want to go back a little bit farther. In the qualifying rounds, we discovered the judges, in particular the Russian judge and one of the other Eastern country judges, were walking over the scoreboard in the middle of the round and looking at the scores. And we saw that, and we said, so we got a video camera out. And next time they came around, we videotaped it. And we got it all on the tape. And now the rules have changed to specifically say that judges were not allowed to look at the scoreboard. So the old nasty American team, we filed a protest. And we presented the videotape with the protest, and they were absolutely forced to disqualify that judge. There was and his scores, and they had to recalculate everything, all the placings, without that judge or those judges, I can't remember which one it was. They had to take their scores out and recalculate the placings. So that was a big deal. And, I won't say we got a black eye, but here's the old Americans being bad boys protested. So comes to the finals. Art shows up learning on the day of the finals that they're not going to pay his airline fare. So he says, I'm just going to give everybody pins. And I says, well, that's really good, Art, but what does that solve? That doesn't solve anything. That doesn't get your airline ticket paid. That doesn't get anything done. I said, Art, you need to say, no pay for this, no judge. He thought about it a while and says, yeah. So then he goes out to judge, and they bring out the first guy, and they're over there judging. And I went over to the side, and unfortunately I said, what are you doing, Art? And they're saying, no, don't talk to the judge while he's judging. Yeah, okay, sorry, I wait till he lands. Then I say, Art, what the heck are you doing? You said you weren't going to judge. I give them all pins. Oh, super. And anyway, he thought about it a while and says, yeah, you're right. And then he says, I'm not judging anymore. And then he walks away. They decide then, well, we'll just take him out. We'll only have 4 judges for the finals. Okay, this was happening so early in the morning, and there wasn't that many people there, because they had to get 3 rounds in and be done by like 6 to go to the banquet that night and present the awards. So they had to get moving. They knew it, and everybody else knew it. And so they said, well, 4 judges, that's what we got to do. And they started again. Okay, they went 1 flyer, and I says, right, then our team manager or the assistant team manager wasn't there because it was so early. So I said, all right, I got nothing to lose. I'm not going to win. And so I went out there. I took the rule book out. I went to the head judge who spoke some English. I pointed right to the section that says, for a world championships, you are required to have 5 judges judging the finals. It says right in the rule book right here. I showed it to him, and he goes, yes. I says, you judge 1 more flight. I'm going to protest this. He goes, well, understood. So they stopped. And the whole thing came to a grinding halt for an hour and some while they were trying to get Art back out there to judge. And I said, Art, you got to be strong. No judge until you're paid. So they finally agreed, yes, we'll pay your flight. And so then he went back out and judged. And then things started. Well, then it came time for me to fly. And there's all the judges that knew that I had done all this. So I suffered accordingly. But I knew that was going to happen. Let's see. There was something else that happened. Something else bad happened with the judging, and I think another judge looked at the scoreboard again and got caught. They had to recalculate all the scores. We went to the banquet not knowing who had done what, because they had to recalculate the scores. And from my understanding is they hadn't even finished recalculating the scores when they were handing out the awards. And not only that, David ended up finishing second, but they gave the award to Bill. It was so bizarre, and Billy was saying, "Wow, that's amazing. How did I finish second?" You know, David had no idea. He didn't know where he was, and he didn't think anything of it. And then he discovered later after the fact that he was second.
Well,
and
Paul,
they had to go
fix
things. It was so crazy.
We've run an hour and 21 seconds now, and I'm going to have to take a break. So give me about 2 minutes to reset everything. I've reset it twice.
Okay.
But
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So hold on a second.
You bet.
Yeah. Welcome back to the. I guess it's past the second half, but probably the final half hour of the Paul Walker interview. I just kept...
As Tom and Ray would say, this is the third half. There you go.
Yeah, we're in the third half.
All right. Yeah, so that was the end of 1998. I had made me really... I thought it was a pretty cool airplane. It was a real Dago orange impact. It won the 98 Nats with this little OS in it. It was a happy airplane. It worked good, but doing what I did guaranteed me I wasn't going to go places with it. So that's what happened. So that was 98. In 2000 for me was a really cool year because that was the year that I took my B-17 to the World Championships. And some might say, what are you doing going with a B-17? You've got no chance of winning, and you're letting everybody down. And my position going in was simple. It was either going to win or it was going to finish 10th. I didn't think there was any in between, but I knew it wasn't going to finish worse than 10th. But it had the chance of impressing a judge or two or three and actually winning. And I still believe that to this day. And so I took that thing there. It's how it got built and all that is a whole other hour's discussion. That was the long process. Suffice to say, we got it there. We got it working. We had this little power system that Howard made to drive the glow plugs. And it's not as simple as just connecting up a hot wire to every glow plug and getting it going. If you get the engine primed just right to start and you leave the glow plug on, it burns the prime out. When you could have started it, it doesn't start right. So we had to have a switch system on it so that it was on, you prime it and make sure it was right, and then you turn it off. So that's what this whole contraption was all about. And then, of course, it had meters on it so that you could tell that you didn't have a burned-out plug and all this. So as soon as you connected it, you knew what was going on. So, yeah, we ended up needing a lot of people to drive that, and we violated the rules about the number of helpers in there, but everybody, for some reason, turned a blind eye to that with this airplane. And so I'd carry the airplane out to the circle. Howard, we had all the wires hooked up to the glow plugs, and he carried the box out and had somebody carrying the handle, and there was somebody else doing something. Anyway, so we had a bunch of people out there. And it was so cool. I flew I flew 7 flights, and I used 30 flips of the prop to start 7 flights. That means I only missed 2 engines to the first start on each one. So there was as I said, there was 5 flights at least that were 4 flip starts, and it was pretty cool. We had the process was worked, and it would start amazingly well, and the whole fuel system was just an incredible thing with the bladders and regulators and pressure sensors and cutoff switches. I've got little trigger valves on it so that I could prime it and let the fuel flow through the system and then stop it so I don't flood the engine. And when I'm ready to go, I just flick that lever and I get it to run, and as soon as it fires, then I turn the lever and let the pressurized fuel get to the system. So it was quite the deal to get going, and it actually flew fairly well. It was pretty surprising, but it was a load. It was a big airplane. It was a heavy airplane, and it wore on my body. It was I did a lot of weightlifting prior to that to get ready for it, and I was good for 3 flights a day usually on that airplane, and otherwise my shoulder would complain.
How about if the wind picked up real good?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How about if the wind picked up real good?
Oh, if the wind picked up, yeah, the line tension was even more, no question. But it still would go through the wind, and so I flew in France with a B-17. It was so cool, and early on, it had some pretty good scores. It was doing well, and but as time wore on, I wore out, and my ability to continue to fly that as well kind of slowly went downhill because of the wear and tear on me. But so I ended up finishing 9th with that airplane, and I was not the lowest placed American that year with the B-17. It was pretty cool. I had Anatoly Kalashnikov. He's the Russian guy that won in '86. He was there watching things just to see, He'd come all that way just to go see, and he watched that and he goes, wow, that is, he says, Paul, he says, my friend, he says, that is the pinnacle of my modeling career, was to come here and watch that airplane fly and do what it did. He says, I could never, ever have imagined anything would work as well as that. That was so impressive, and I well, thank you. I was impressed that he would even say those things to me. It was really cool. I really enjoyed that. So, but yeah, there's all kinds of stories about the rain that we went through there, and on and on and on, and the mud and the yuck. Anyway, wind. Oh yeah, we got wind there. David didn't make the final 15. He was the first American ever to make the top 15, I'm afraid. And he had his 60 powered thunder gazer or whatever, and he didn't make the top 15. The wind was so bad, So that tells you what it was like. It was just not his day. So 2000, that was pretty cool. And after that, I chose not to go to the 2002 World Champs. I was wanting a break from that. It's tough trying to compete, go to the team trials every other year, go to the World Champs every other year, fly in some naps and do all that, and stay in top shape to do this, and then try and experiment with things. While you were working, it was I understand Les McDonald's point he made when he was getting done. He says, well, I'm the only guy that had to work for a living. I'm competing against guys that basically didn't have to work for a living. I said, well, he's not the only one to think that. I was in that same boat. So I knew the Chinese didn't have to work for a living. Some of the Russians didn't have to work for a living. And, airline pilots, well, they got a lot of time to go flying. So, yeah, I understand. And it always did me well when I went there to beat the Chinese or a professional, because I wasn't. I worked for a living. So it always made me feel better. I said, you know what, I didn't win, but Howard coined this saying for me. He says, you're the champion of the free world, as opposed to the Chinese or the Russians. You're the champion of the free world. I was the champion of the free world lots of times, but never the champion of the world except the one. So I stepped out in 2002, and I went back in 2004, and I said, it's in the U.S. I'm going to go. I'm going to do this. And I took extra time off work. I went to Muncie early. I was the first person there for this, and I got out and I started practicing. I had one of those Mustangs that I was flying with, 4-stroke. I had a 72 in a Mustang that weighed 62 ounces. Boy, did it have a power-to-weight ratio, and the wing loading, it was killer good. And I had spent a week there practicing, and it was cool because I kind of got that feeling that I talk about in those articles occasionally. The one I had in '92, that feeling that I was going to win and no one was going to stop me, I was getting that feeling in practice flying that thing. It was so good. I said, this is it, man. I'm going to do this again. And I did that hourglass and practiced 1, 2. I did the third corner. I was coming down about halfway down in the last leg of the hourglass, and it was a little shudder, like right where you cross the intersection, there was a little shudder, and then the plane just there weren't many big pieces left. Unbelievable. I just stood there in the center with the handle in my hand for a second going, wow, what just happened? So I had to go to one of my backups, and I had a backup Mustang that was okay, but it wasn't as good as that airplane. And, of course, it was a 4-stroke, and I had one killer 4-stroke, and that was it. And now it had bent parts all around it. So I had to go to the backup stuff, and it flew, but, it just wasn't right, and it was another subpar performance. So yeah, it was okay. I survived, but then I had to stay another week for the naps, knowing that I had less than the best equipment once again. So
Billy won that one, didn't he?
Billy won that one. Well, and there's more to that story too. Good thing you brought that up. Warren was the CD for Stunt at the World Champs, and during the finals, we had the rainstorm come through, and I can't remember if it's the second round or the third round. It was somewhere. It must have been the third round. And I've been watching, I watch all these people fly. I see what's going on, and I knew that Behringer and Billy were in the running here. But I watched Behringer fly enough to know that his airplane wouldn't fly in the rain. It didn't like flying in the rain. So we had stopped for the rain, and I was the first one to go back up. And most of the storm had passed, and again, the scheduling was such they were in a rush to get done so they could get to the banquet and all that, So I'm standing out there in the rain with my airplane, and Warren wanders out and he says, well, I think the ugly stuff is past, and he says, you know what, I'm going to leave it up to you as to when you want to start. Once we start, we're going. Well, I knew the person immediately behind me was Behringer. I knew he didn't like to fly in the rain, and I knew I was out of it, so I said, let's start right now. So I went through my flight in the rain, and Behringer had to go fly his flight in the rain, and his score suffered. And then Billy flew, and, he did okay, and Billy won. He won by what happened in that last round, and not many people know that. I think Warren knows that, and I know that, but that's an interesting, yeah. Billy did a good job, and so that was the end of 2004. Let's see, 6. I decided I was going to go to Spain. I wanted to see Spain. What the heck? We're going to go to Spain and do that. Now, if I'd have been going to Spain, living where I live now, I'd have had an incredible advantage over everybody because I live at the same altitude as we had at Spain, and the weather in the summer is almost the same as it is there in Spain. In fact, I came over here to Spokane in 2006. Joe Dill lived over here, and I said, let's go find a place to go fly, and I'm going to spend a couple of days over here getting ready. And, it's a good thing I did because I was surprised at the difference in my airplane going from sea level at 70 degrees to 2,000 feet-ish at 100 degrees. It made a difference. So it gave me a head start in getting the airplane adjusted. And so we went there, but we had a real case study of extremes there, because you go out in the morning, and it was maybe 60 degrees, and you look at the density altitude, and it was, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet. And as the day wore on, all of a sudden, you're looking at 5,000 feet, 6,000 feet density altitude. It changed a lot during the day, and you're always having to fiddle your needle valve, and I was always trying to figure out, okay, how hard am I going to start pushing these corners now, and you push them too hard in that thin air, and boy, oh boy, you could really lose it. So it became a real struggle of okay, here's the condition, exactly how am I going to approach this flight, get the needle right and do all these things. And so that was, let's see, this was the start finally of the 2-round qualifying, the 2-circle qualifying routine that the World Champs uses now. So they had one official circle, which was a donut with weeds in the middle, and then the other was a soccer field, which was, wish we'd held the competition there instead. That was a nice field. And so we'd have a qualifying flight on the grass circle, then we come over here to the paved circle and fly, and then you go back to the grass and fly, and come to the paved and fly, and so after qualifying, I had won both rounds on the grass circle, and I was up near the top on the paved circle. And I thought, well, I'm in pretty fair shape here. It's going to work okay. And then they, they do their fiddle on the judges, and they take this one judge out and that judge, and anyway, they ended up taking a judge out that was scoring me high. And I ended up flying without that judge, and I still did okay. I mean, this was another one that was this was really, really close competition. I think it's one of the closest world champs that I've ever flown in. But until the last score was in, we didn't know who finished first, second, or third. We know who was in first, second, or third, but we didn't know what the order was. But it was so close. It was, a matter of a couple of points in the FAI scoring system, which is nothing. So, but Behringer ended up first, David was second, I was third, and we're only talking about a handful of points. I think there was maybe a 5-point spread between first and third, which is minuscule. So, but the conditions were really pretty brutal. 100 degrees at altitude. Yeah, I wish I had my electric stuff for that. That would have, I'd have smoked them all big time on that. But yeah, that was cool. So that was 2008, 10. I decided not to go. Between work and all kinds of other things, I just didn't have the energy for it. And then my last one was in 12, and that was after I retired, and I decided I'm going to at least give that one more shot and see how it goes. And there's all kinds of parts of the story that controlled exactly what my airplane looked like and how it was painted and whatnot. We're not going to get into that. I finally was into full electric. I had things working pretty well. This is now a regular impact, basically. It was one of the yellow ones. I used that at the Nats once. It was came in second at the Nats and to Mr. Moon. But it was a pretty good flying airplane. It was nice and light, and it worked very well over there, surprisingly. We had qualifying the first day of qualifying was wind was right at the limit of what FAI allows, which was about 9 meters per second, which is about 20 miles an hour. And it was at that limit all day. Because the judge would go out there and put his thing up, and okay, stop for a few minutes and wait. Oh, okay, it's down. It's down to 19 and a half. Go fly, And that was going on all day. And so I flew in that. I basically won that round with that airplane. Even in that big air, even David's fancy Super 75 powered thing didn't score as well. It's hard. And again, it's hard to compare scores because the exact wind conditions are never the same. But mine worked just fine. And then I got so ill that the finals rounds were an absolute struggle for me. And I like to think, who knows what would have been different if I had been able to concentrate. But we flew and we went from that horrible air to just absolute dead air. It was a steady zero with variable gusts to a half to 1 mile per hour in variable directions. And many people flew flights with a mile an hour wind in their face. And it's just enough to keep you from scoring really good. And so I still managed to finish fourth. It's funny how you start out this thing and you want to win, and you certainly want to go at least the third, And at first I wasn't even happy with third place. I was pretty upset. Well, my very first one I was happy with third place, but by the time 1990 rolled around and I finished third, I wasn't very happy about that. And so now it's funny, you come full circle, get to the end, and I said, I flew this, I was fourth, and I was happy. But our goal going into that, and I told both David and the rest of this, is that our goal is to win the team championship. We have a team that can do this. There's no question about it. The last time the team was together, we won the team championship in 2008, and we were together again in 12. We wanted to get in 12. So that was our goal, and we did, and so yeah, enjoyed the heck out of that. It was an interesting deal, but so that was my last one, and whether I'll try out again or not, I don't know. I'm not getting any younger, and it's getting harder and harder to get up the energy and the will to go do all the practice I needed to go do, and so we'll see what happens. But I've certainly and had a good time over the years doing it, and I've done reasonably well. So I've had a good time at it.
Well, we sure want to thank you.
Any more questions?
We sure want to thank you for having us on. We've been on now about almost an hour and a half, and hope to have. I'd like to have you back again. I'm sure there's a lot more that you can tell us.
Oh, there's lots of NAT stories I can tell, but I enjoy the heck out of those too.
Yeah, this kind of gives the listeners and the viewers of Stunt Hangar an insight to Paul Walker, and I'm sure everybody wants to thank you for your valuable trimming chart that everybody seems to really love. So they thank you for that.
Great. I hope they help. That's the whole plan. I just hope they help people.
Right.
Yep.
All right, Paul. Thanks for being on the Stunt Hangar program. We'll see if we can get you on in the next month or so.
You bet. Okay.
All right. You have a good day.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
That was Paul Walker. Quite a story. Took an hour and 25 minutes to tell. I'm hoping that we can get some pictures on this thing, and I'll get you some video that I can find, and maybe some video of the bomber, or some pictures from his Nats trips, or